Hi, my name's Brianna. I am a coordinator at Baby Tree Surrogacy. A surrogacy coordinator does a lot, but to kind of briefly touch on some of the things that we do, we are with our girls from the moment that they come in our door, answering questions, going over their benefit package. We help arrange travel to and from the clinics in terms of hotel and airfare. If that's applicable for our girls, we deal directly with the fertility clinics and helping set up their initial appointments, getting their medical records evaluated, sending them to lawyers when that happens. We are a one-stop shop for our girls. I'm sure we'll do a whole other video at some point that kind of lays out exactly what our responsibilities are, what we're here for, but really we are here for absolutely everything they need. This job is unique. It's very personal. We do tend to become very friendly with the girls. It's such an interesting experience. I don't think there's anything out there quite like this. This video specifically is talking about surrogacy and what that is. Specifically with our agency, that would be gestational surrogacy. There are two different types of surrogacy, traditional and gestational. I'm going to touch on both just so you understand the difference. If you were just to type into Google surrogacy, you're probably going to get a lot of mixed results for both. So I feel like it's important for you to know the difference so you can know exactly what you're searching for if you choose to do some more research. Traditional surrogacy is using the surrogate's egg. The sperm could come from the intended father or it could come from a sperm donor, but the egg would be the surrogate's. Gestational surrogacy, which is what is most common nowadays and what we as an agency specifically only deal with, is not using the surrogate's egg. So the egg either comes from the intended mother or an egg donor, and the egg is fertilized in a fertility clinic with either sperm from the father or a sperm donor. That embryo is grown for 3 to 6 days in an IVF clinic, and then in a very complicated process involving IVF medications and months of legal and psychological evaluations, the surrogate can transfer the already formed embryo into her uterus, and she essentially incubates or helps gestate, which is where you get the term gestational surrogacy, the baby. I know, that's a lot. I decided we would do a few videos for the Facebook page that I'm going to link the YouTube videos to that kind of help break down and explain a lot of what that process is. I would absolutely love suggestions for different videos if there's anything you guys think could be helpful. So don't feel like if it's not covered during this one video, we're not eventually going to get to your topic. So we get a ton of questions in our line of work about an array of things. I figure I gathered a list of my own of what I think are some of the most asked questions, but once again, if you don't ask me, I can't answer it for you. So if you have any questions, we would absolutely love to get a phone call from you. Any of our offices, not just this one, would, but I'd like to tell you a little bit more about myself before we get in there. I, like I said before, have been with this office for 1.5 years. We started out in California originally. We had one office in Hesperia, California. We are fortunate enough now to have one office in Hesperia, an office in Lancaster, an office in Palm Desert, an office in Ontario, and now our Knoxville, Tennessee office here. I was very fortunate to be a big part of creating a lot of those offices. It's given me so many good experiences. I've got to meet so many wonderful women. I absolutely love my coworkers. I'm not sure how many of you could say that. I'm sure you're like, yeah, she's on video. Of course she's going to say she loves her coworkers. But I do. They're all fantastic. I think we're a great team. I love talking with them, and if I have a question, there's always somebody to bounce that off of. It's a great work environment, at least in my opinion. I'm sure, of course, if you ask them, they'll all say they love me too because they have to. To cover some of the questions, I've written them down on paper, so if I do glance down, it's just to make sure that I don't miss any. The biggest thing we hear in our line of work is, oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't give a baby up. That is absolutely everyone's right to have their own opinion on the subject. We're definitely not here to change anybody's mind. We just want to inform and hopefully see some of you in the office. With surrogacy, like I said before, it being gestational surrogacy specifically, you have no biological ties to the baby, which I feel at least is very important for a lot of our girls. That way you don't feel a connection in terms of some type of biological connection. That baby doesn't look like you. You get the joy of watching that intended mother or the intended father or the family or, whatever your specific surrogacy journey looks like. You get the joy of watching them start to experience parenthood. It's beautiful. One of the requirements of being a surrogate is having children of your own. So all of our girls know exactly what that feels like. Everyone knows what it feels like to hold your baby in your arms for the first time, and all the little things that you do during a surrogacy journey are to help them achieve that goal. It's huge, in their lives. Most people obviously don't start out, being younger when they're planning what their ideal family is going to look like. They don't think that's going to involve surrogacy for the most part. So it's wonderful to be able to help them finally achieve a goal that they've probably been trying for a long, long time. We don't say giving the baby back. We don't say giving the baby up. We would say giving the baby back. They give you an embryo, you give them a baby. It's like magic. Some other questions we get a lot, like I just said recently, is we get the question about, can I be a surrogate if I haven't had a child? The answer is no. The reason behind that is not because we don't think you could mentally handle it, though I do feel like that is a big part. How do you know if you could give that person the child that is theirs back if you've never experienced motherhood and birth? But the biggest reason is actually to do with knowing if you are actually able. How are you ever supposed to know that you can carry a pregnancy successfully if you've never done it before? Unfortunately, the harsh reality is that 1 in 4 women experience some type of infertility trouble in their life, whether it just be a miscarriage, maybe trouble conceiving on their own. Everybody has their personal struggles, and you'll never know if you're one of those 4 if you don't have a baby of your own. We get asked a lot about breastfeeding too. It's absolutely wonderful to breastfeed. We're not telling you to stop breastfeeding. Please take the time, enjoy that bonding with your child if that's how you've chosen to feed them. You should never stop breastfeeding your child for surrogacy. However, you cannot start surrogacy until you are done breastfeeding. So far, research does show that none of the hormones in the IVF medications that are required for surrogacy do go through the milk. However, your prolactin levels, which is something you naturally produce when you are lactating, do affect your ability to conceive as well again. So that makes fertility clinics do have a requirement in terms of being done breastfeeding. We get asked a lot about if a surrogate if a girl could be a surrogate if her tubes are tied. The answer is yes. And that leads back to what I said about gestational surrogacy. That is not your egg. So you do not even have to have your tubes. You don't even need ovaries. You just need a uterus. The embryo is directly implanted into your uterus during an embryo transfer, which I'm sure we'll do a video on that and the IVF medications as well. We get asked a lot about the requirements for surrogacy. And those requirements are going to vary slightly according to the clinic. So the requirements we as an agency set do best reflect what most clinics are asking you for. That is to be between the ages of 20 and 38, have a BMI, which is a body mass index, of 32 or below. The reason is not because anybody is trying to call you fat. I'm sure, women carry their own children above a 32 BMI all the time. The only reason behind that is statistics. Unfortunately, statistics are telling us that women with a BMI over 32 do have a lot more trouble with the IVF meds being as effective, which will increase costs for intended parents. Women with a BMI over 32 do tend to have more problems during their pregnancy and are at a greater risk for problems in their pregnancy in general. So even if maybe you've not had a risk before, your pregnancy was great and it was beautiful, it could potentially be at a higher risk. So when helping a family achieve their goal of a baby, it's very important to minimize the risks the best we can. So that's what fertility clinics tell us. We are not telling you you need to lose weight at all. Unfortunately, for the clinics, if you want to be a surrogate, however, a BMI does need to be below 32. The good news is that is one of the few requirements that can be worked on. Some of these other requirements, like having a healthy delivery, that's not something you can change if you've been unfortunate to be affected by a preterm birth or a complication during your pregnancy. If you're curious what a complication would entail, we would absolutely love to take a phone call from you to discuss the specifics. It's a no judgment office. That's what we always tell our girls when you walk in. You can tell us anything. We're going to do our best to guide you, but judging you is not part of our job, and it's not something that you should ever experience at one of our offices. We have all, walked our own paths in life. We've all made our own decisions, and we're not here to make you feel any differently about the decisions you've made. We will offer the exact advice that is absolutely necessary for a surrogacy journey. So going back to requirements, having no more than 5 births. I know some of you probably wanted a bigger family and all your pregnancies were great. The only reason for that requirement is because the fertility clinics have seen an increased risk in people who have over 5 births. During a pregnancy, complication risks go up for placenta previa, for preterm labor, for short cervix, a number of other issues, unfortunately, so it's just not a risk that fertility clinics tend to be able to take. We always will evaluate every single girl who comes in individually, but for the most part, that is a pretty hard and fast rule. You can have had no more than 2 C-sections of your own. Once again, it goes back to health risks. None of these are just to be super selective. It's to minimize risks for the surrogate so she is able to go on healthily back to her family, and continue her life with her children, which I'm sure she would appreciate. And it does minimize risks for the baby as well. 2 C-sections is the limit because issues tend to arise in terms of placental abruption from the scar. It's something called a window uterus, which is a very thin uterus, extra scar tissue, which can cause complications all on its own, and the extra blood loss that's associated with multiple surgeries like a C-section. You do need to be a non-smoker and drug-free. If you have smoked in your past, the answer is pretty simple. If you've never smoked during a pregnancy and outside of a pregnancy, you may still qualify. Unfortunately, if you've ever smoked during a pregnancy, even if it was in your past, the clinics do have a hard and fast rule on that being a no in our experience. If you have been a smoker in the past, most clinics have a rule of a year smoke-free before they will agree to see you in the event that you did not smoke during a pregnancy. You do need to live here in the U.S. as well. You do not necessarily need to be a U.S. citizen, but you do need to be a valid green card holder or a U.S. citizen to be a surrogate. Student visas and things like that, unfortunately, do not apply. Let me see. What other things should we cover? How soon can I become a surrogate after delivery? That's a big one that we get a lot as well. If you delivered vaginally, then you're looking at about 6 months before you could transfer. There's so much we could do with you in the meantime. We have to gather medical records and have those evaluated by clinics, and that can take some time. We encourage anybody who's curious. It doesn't matter if you did just deliver. Information is always free, and there's no time limit. You need to be postpartum to get information. So at the very least, if you're interested, we would love a call. We can chat with you about what those requirements are, what we can do for you. We also hear a lot about selective reduction, abortion, termination, things like that. We are not here to make that choice for you. You will be matched with a set of intended parents who agree with your views on that. You do not need to have to want to abort or terminate to work with our agency. Obviously, it could always take longer to match you if you have those qualifications, because you need to make sure that the match is going to be right for you. The intended parents have to want to agree to a no termination, no reduction clause as well. That is just fine. Like I said, it does take longer to match you, but the choice is yours, and that shouldn't be something that you change for surrogacy if it's something that you wouldn't agree to. Can I be a surrogate if I take medication for anxiety or depression? Medications in general are always going to be case by case. We won't know until we know exactly what medications you're specifically on. If we have questions, we're fortunate enough to be able to talk to the fertility clinics and see exactly how they feel. if it's something that we've never encountered. If you have required medication in the past, then yes, there is a very good chance you are still eligible for surrogacy. However, if you are currently using any medication for mental health, we are unable to accept you simply because pregnancy comes with increased hormones in your body. Increased hormones can cause depression to get worse, and like I've said a few times throughout the video, your health is much more important than a surrogacy journey. It's a wonderful thought to even look into surrogacy in the first place and to consider helping a family in that way. There's nothing wrong with not qualifying if your own health could be at risk. There's no shame in that. We deal with stuff like this all the time. We would love to answer questions and talk about your specific case with you. And you don't need to feel like by giving us a call, you're going to be judged on anything that comes up in your medical history when you talk to us about it. Like I've said, and will continue to say, we all have our own paths that we've walked in life. There's no right or wrong for you that might be right or wrong for me. So if we just continue to have the judgment-free environment that we really do strive for, I feel like it's a benefit to the surrogates so they have a safe place that they can talk and express any issues or concerns that they're feeling, anything that's happened in their past. We really do try our best. I get questions from girls about partners. Can I be a surrogate if I don't have a partner? Can I be a surrogate if I do have a partner? The answer is yes to both. You do need to either be in a committed relationship with a partner. I'm sorry, but that means if you are sexually active with someone, they do need to be your partner in terms of getting tested for STDs, illegal drugs, nicotine levels. Clinics will test for as well. If your partner is a smoker and they do not smoke around you, as long as it's disclosed on your application, because honesty is always the best policy, that may or may not be a deal breaker for specific intended parents, but it doesn't mean we can't work with you as a whole as long as you are not testing positive for nicotine, which does mean that he or she could not smoke around you. They could not smoke in the car with you. Secondhand smoke is a real thing, obviously. If you come to us single, that does mean you are single throughout your entire surrogacy journey. Something to consider as well. It is in contracts. We would love to discuss more about that. I will do a whole video on contracts. That is a huge subject that takes so much time. We get asked about STDs. If it is something like HIV, hepatitis, things like that, unfortunately, those are disqualifiers. If you have had an STD in your past, that is not going to disqualify you. The only STD that we really can work with specifically would be herpes. If you did have herpes and you did decide to apply, the condition in your surrogacy contract does say if you were to have an outbreak, you would have to do a C-section. That's just for the best interest of the baby, obviously. We get asked about the responsibilities of a surrogate, which, is a huge thing. I do think we should probably do a video to cover a good majority of that. But it's essentially is to always be honest, go to the appointments you're supposed to, keep us updated like you're supposed to, take your medication like you're supposed to. All of these things we go over in detail. We are huge about communication. We give all of our girls our personal cell phone numbers. That way, if it's easier just to shoot us a text, if you've got a question, you can do that. We love when you put us in group text with all the other girls in the office that we're in. So that way, if maybe I can't get back to you right now, maybe I'm in a meeting or on a phone call, one of the other girls can get to you much faster if your preference is texting. We give you our number to call, outside of business hours. If something's important, you always have to have a way to reach us. So we really bond with you guys. We give so much time and love and energy into this company. It's something I don't think any surrogacy coordinator would do for money. It's a passion to be a part of something like this. I do think that's going to be all for this video. I don't want to keep this going incredibly long. If there are any more questions, we do have some on our website. All of our girls at any office are always happy to answer questions. It doesn't just have to be this one. You don't have to be close to one of our offices to call them and ask questions. If you're East Coast, then that is my office, which is here in Knoxville. If you are West Coast, that's really going to depend on your area. You can find all that at babytreesurrogacy.com under the Contact Us section. Until the next video, thank you guys so much for taking the time. I know this is an incredibly long video. Surrogacy is an incredibly long process, and I want to make sure it's as detailed as possible.